There's a reason I've made this many videos on gap up or gap down trading, because these gappers are literally what day traders live for. In order to profit from trading, you want to trade stocks that have momentum and volatility. Otherwise, you might as well be like my ex-husband, Mike Bagholder, holding on to his stable dividend stocks and dead penny stocks. Welcome back to another Humble Trader video. Today, I'm sharing my live trading footage and commentary on the hottest stock of the year, NVDA. This stock recently had a massive gap up to new all-time highs, over $500, after a highly anticipated earnings report, and of course, artificial intelligence hype. I made close to 5 figures profit on this one trade, and you'll learn my exact strategies trading this huge gap up. I always appreciate the amount of support and comments you guys have shown me in my live trading series. So in this video, you can expect to learn my trade planning and execution process, the key criteria of the strategies, risk management for the strategies, and how to read and react to price action in order to maximize your profits. It does take me a long time to make these kind of videos, so if you appreciate them and if you want to see more, make sure to drop a like down below. Thank you very much, and share this video with your trading partners. Okay, you know the drill. We always start analyzing the stock we're trading, in this case NVDA, on the daily chart. Because the daily chart contains important information about all the key levels, your potential entries as support, and your potential profit target. So that's why instead of going in straight to your intraday chart, you want to start from the daily chart. So looking at this NVIDIA daily chart, you can see that the stock has been on a tear ever since the last earnings it had in May 25th. And the most recent one that we are talking about the trade today, it's this particular one over here, August 24th. As you can see, in the last 2 weeks prior to this earnings, NVIDIA pretty much ran into it. Even though it sold off a little bit with the market down to $400 in the mid of August. So whenever you have stocks this strong leading into the earnings, we're talking about last 4 or 5 days, it went from $420 to $500. That means the stock was highly anticipated to perform really well for the earnings. So whether it's investors, retail traders, analysts, or algos, they all had really high expectation for this stock to do well. And a lot of times, while yes, that's really good for the stock price, as traders, you want to be aware of this concept of buy the rumor, sell the news. However, if you are a trader, it's very important that you utilize technical analysis. That's still your key to profitability, whether you are short-term swing trading or day trading. Because you don't want to be fundamentally right, but technically wrong. So what do I mean by that? If we zoom out a little bit, looking at the last couple of times the stock has, ran up into earnings, the last recent time was this one, right? You can see stock definitely ran up into earnings and created a huge gap. And you can see the stock on the day after the earnings release actually spiked and sold off. And same thing over here. If you look at this particular day, right, you had earnings, you had a little spike. You can see like this little candle here. You had a nice little spike, but the stock definitely pulled back a lot. So it's not like a very strong all-day green day like you see in some of the strongest days that NVIDIA ripped everyone off. So even just doing a simple technical analysis on the chart for NVIDIA, you can see that it has a tendency of running into the news and selling off after the positive news, despite a huge overnight gap up. Okay, so now that we've gotten the analysis from the daily chart, it's finally time to look at the intraday chart. This is the particular day that the trade I'm talking about over here. So you can see after hours, the stock ripped from 470s all the way to like 520s after hours. The next day, it faded a little bit. Next day opened around 511s pre-market, and since then it faded off into the market open. Now, when I was planning to trade the stock, I was looking at $500 as a key level. $500, a nice little round number, psychological number. That's also the pre-market support over here, as well as some after hours levels. right? And you can see pre-market, the stock, had a little high here, pre-market high, 511s. But ever since that little peak at 7 o'clock, it kind of faded down to like lower lows, below VWAP, and lower highs. So the stock during pre-market is definitely already downtrending. So seeing that, along with what we just talked about on the daily chart, that made me become more short biased on this overnight gap up that we're seeing on NVDA. So we identified the key level as $500. So what does that mean? If the stock after the open breaks below 500, then you have like a nice little gap from 500 to where it came from, around like 475, 480s. So we're talking about a 25 point gap down, right? So that's the amount of downside there is to profit from if I short the stock. Now, let's talk about the upside, because I could be wrong at any given time. If the stock reclaims over 500, right? 500 being the key level. If it reclaims and start heading back to highs, on the long side, the stock has upside to 507s, 512s. It's not bad, but the upside is definitely not as big as the downside. So since I was more short biased, let's line up some of these potential levels here. So let's take a look at these levels here. So under 500, there's some small level down here at 490. You cannot get that from the daily chart, but from the daily chart, you can definitely get 480s over here, because that's the previous highs from 2 days ago before earnings. Remember, we're looking at this one day over here. Okay, so if I'm short below that $500 key level, I'm gonna use VWAP as my risk. That's kind of the way I trade. If a stock stays below VWAP, such as this, obviously when you're trading, it's not as clear as it is now. That's the way I trade. I only use VWAP and volume indicator, and then like support and demand and supply, etc. But if the stock stays below VWAP, and the further it pulls away from VWAP, that's a sign that it's really weak. So I want to stay short along the trend, the downside trend. So this is how I roughly plan out my trade, my thesis, my profit target, and risk area during pre-market. Give me a thumbs up if you're following the process so far. And we have this kind of pre-market trade planning process every single day in the community. So if you're interested in joining us live with myself and the trading coaches, you can check out the link down below. As you probably already know from all of my YouTube videos, most of my strategies involve scalping, momentum, and shorting. All of those things will require a very fast broker platform. And I have an exciting promo from one of the premium brokers I personally use, Centerpoint Securities. If you're trading with over $30,000, you can use Centerpoint to day trade with 0 commissions for 60 days. And that's not all. You'll also get access to Dashtrader Pro for 1 month for free. That's the trading platform you see in all my videos. That's another $150 value for free. To get this offer with all the freebies I just mentioned, you can sign up to Centerpoint Securities down below. And now let's get back to the video. Alright, so let's see what happens to NVIDIA after the market's open. You can see it's 9:30 right now, market hour. You can see the stock at the open, it's already selling off at $500 key level. Now you can also see that I took a little loss already pre-market. I took a short here at that $500 key level. I think I had like 300 or 500 shares. I shorted that, I was wrong, and immediately covered for a loss of $2,400. That's my pre-market trade. And you can see at the open, it's selling off the same area. So I had the right idea, but wrong timing. But it's okay, I always prefer to just cut the loss so I can have a really clear head to execute once again after the market's open. So you can see it's already staying very heavy. After that key level, $500 flushed down, you can see I can barely get filled. I'm like, oh, I need to short the bid, but like the bids just get smacked down way too fast. You can see I'm struggling to get filled. I realized, okay, this thing is not bouncing. You can see it's already down at 495s. Again, if I didn't cut my loss at pre-market, I'll be up decently right now. But once again, you cannot think like that in trading. So I realized I have to chase a little bit. It's not ideal, but I want to make sure I'm chasing with the size I'm comfortable risking. Man, that was a huge flush at the open. We're talking about 500 down to 492s already in 1 minute, okay? This is 1 minute of the open. Obviously, I wasn't happy about missing the entry, but things just happened way too fast. You can see it's bouncing a little bit. So I shorted some at 494's average. Again, it's still not ideal because I was trying to get in at 500, but it's an okay starter. So I shorted 1,000 shares. You can see very volatile at the time. The stock is already trying to bounce a little bit. But again, I'm shorting with the amount of size I'm comfortable, even if the stock bounces $1, $2. It bounced up to like 495 for a little bit, so it's down like 50 cents for just a little bit. But you can see it couldn't hold that 495s. And a lot of times people ask me, Shay, how do you hold through such volatility? It's because I'm using a share size I'm very okay with withstanding $1 or even $2 moves. So if you find yourself, having trouble with holding on to a stock and letting it work, like in this case, I recommend sizing down. So you can see I'm trying to cover just a little bit at 492s, trying to cover 500 shares because it does look like it wants to bounce a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, so I covered some around 492.60s, so up about $2. But the idea is that I cover a little bit, but I want to add on the bounces on confirmation. Remember that 490s level we talked about earlier? That's a small level, not the strongest support because there's no daily levels over there. So fast forward a little bit, you can see it's now 935. The stock is trying to bounce to 496-ish. So I'm down on realized about like $100, $200 and realized negative 800 on the day. But once again, you can see I zoom in and out of the 2-minute and 5-minute many times just to see how it's reacting to VWAP. You can see that it's still really far from VWAP. It cannot even bounce. And VWAP, once again, it's my stop out area. So I added back that 500 shares. Same average, 494s. Fast forward, you can see I added a little bit on the 2-minute charts here. I added over here around 495-ish. Now I have 2,000 shares because I keep on zooming in and out to see the strength of the stock. You can see it barely can even test VWAP. So that's the reason I'm staying in. I even doubled up. And the stock is back testing low day. Covered a little bit 492s. Exact same execution as earlier. I want to make sure I'm saving the majority of the shares for the huge flush down. That's what I'm looking for. You can see even though I'm trading NVDA at the bottom, on the top I'm usually looking at some other stocks that's relevant. So I'm looking at Meta. You can see very similar price action. The stock gapped up overnight and then sold off. No news, right? It's just up with rest of the tech stocks gapping up. So the fact that it's selling off kind of gives me, an added sense of, okay, like other tech stocks are selling off, then NVIDIA is also likely to do the same. Again, even though my average isn't the best and I have unrealized loss while the stock is chopping around, I'm okay holding it because I already taken some small profit earlier. And now I'm ready to add if it bounces or add lower if it confirms. You can see fast forward down here on the 2 minutes, NVIDIA's bear flagging. Right? On the 5 minutes, there's still no green candle to be found. So I think this is something you can use. This is a pro tip over here. Use at least 2 or 3 time frames to confirm your thesis. So on the 2 minutes, it's bear flagging. On the 5 minutes, there's still no green candles in sight. So that tells me the stock is still very weak. The bottom or the reversal hasn't formed yet. So that's why, I'm continuing to stay in on the short side, being very patient here. We cover stocks like NVIDIA and other smaller stocks that we're watching in our free Sunday watch list. So if you're interested, you can sign up with the link down below. Again, it's a free watch list you get every single Sunday. You can see it's bear flagging, right? Lower lows on the 2 minute. And now you're going to crack the low of the day. You can see I'm trying to add, probably not fast enough. When this thing flushes, it flashes down quick. You can see I added some, 2,000 shares, 493 average. And the stock is flushing. You can see we're down to 490s, that small little support we talked about earlier. And unrealized 6,000 on this trade. Let's see, we're back at 491s. Again, I'm looking for another leg down on the flush. Here I actually made a mistake of stopping out 1,000 shares. Okay, that's interesting. I actually forgot about this. This is interesting for me to review as well. I actually stopped out 1,000 shares, so you can see I'm actually still net negative realized on NVDA. So I stopped out at 494. So I think I got spooked out, okay? Because I think the stock flushed down for a little bit, but really quickly bounced. I thought it was going to reclaim. But you can see, let's see if this reclaim actually lasts a long time. If that was a true reclaim, a true reversal, the stock should like continue the bounce. So let's see. That 495s area is still holding up here. You can see once after I covered a little bit, the stock can barely hold that area. A couple minutes later, the stock is back to the low of the day. Yeah, I did stop out a little bit early, 1,000 shares. Okay, switching to a 5 minutes down here, you can see stock is back at low of the day. 5-minute candles all red, 490s. And now I'm trying to slam the bid to get short. Sometimes when you like try to chase with flushes, like these kind of large cap stocks, they flush so fast, it's hard to get in. So I got filled 500 shares at the low of the day. Again, I would only do that, slamming the bid at the low of the day, if there's still a lot of downside. So you can see even though I slammed it, I chased it, definitely. At 489, there's a lot of downside to we're talking about another 10 points possible for the stock. So only if there's enough profit target to make sense of the risk, then I would chase the entry. Yeah, of course, but definitely looking at this, I wish I didn't cover that 1,000 shares earlier at 493. But you can see the stock is flushing down, remaining pretty heavy right now. So I covered 500 shares, or 1,000 shares rather. Like looking at this footage makes me realize I need to work on my exit. I think my entries are okay. Like I'm okay with the chases, but I think I do cover too much too early. Like that 493 we talked about, and over here 486, there's still more downside. There's no reason to cover 1,000 shares. Should have covered like 500 max or like 300. So I still find things to improve on, regardless of whether it's a win or a loss. Let's see if we get one more leg. Some downside on NVDA. You can see I covered a little bit more. Now I have a remainder of 300 shares. I covered some more at 484 on the short side. So locked in $5,000 realized. And I believe I'm all out on the short over here. I'm all out. You can see my position box is 0 on the short. Locked in about 7,600 on the short side. So one thing you should remember about these large cap stocks, especially these like volatile tech stocks like NVIDIA, AMD, or even Tesla, they tend to trend after a very important daily level is broken, whether it's to the upside or downside. If it's broken out of to the upside, then it tends to trend. Now that's one of my favorite long strategies we talked about on this channel before as well. But in this case, this is an important level, that $500 level over here, it's broken down, right? So once a stock like this breaks that key level, it tends to sell off all the way to the downside, it tends to trend down. So that's why you wanna stay with the trend, don't fight it. The reversal usually comes, but it's a lot later. I do usually wait and see if it's gonna form a reversal, likely around that 480s area, because I'm looking at a Meta. I'm trying to cover out all of Meta on the top here. But on the NVIDIA, on the long side, I think there will be a bounce, but I'm just not sure when. Remember that previous area, 480s, is a daily level we talked about? So that's the area I'm looking at for a potential reversal long. Essentially, you're bouncing the stock after a very aggressive sell-off like this, from 500 down to 480. So that's a 20-point downside, right? So we're looking for a small bounce on the reversal move. That's also a strategy I've talked about in my previous videos. I'll show you that in just a second. So right now, the only position I have is Meta. But yes, I am looking for a reversal. You can see me trying to gain 1,000 shares at 484s trying to see if that's the area it's going to bounce. I've come to realize that psychologically, it's a little bit hard for me to long the stock and trade it well after I just shorted the same stock. So for me, it's actually a little bit hard for me to execute the long side correctly. Not making excuses, I'm just saying I do find that I usually don't trade the opposite side that well after I just closed out one bias. So you can see 484s is struggling to hold. I still have the same 1100 shares. Just trying to see if it forms a green candle on the 5-minute chart or even the 2-minute charts rather for a bounce. So basically, while trading this, trying to find the long side, I was essentially seeing a potential gap up reversal long on this intraday chart after the stock has already sold off 20 points. This is one of my go-to strategies that I use to trade large cap stocks on the long side. For those of you who have not seen my previous video lesson on this particular strategy, let me give you a quick breakdown of the key criteria. So number one, you need to see a pre-market gap up on significant fundamental news. So we just talked about this. NVDA did have a huge gap up from prior day's close all the way to $500. And the fundamental news is the earnings beat, right? Really, really positive, really significant. And number two, you want to see huge volume. I mean, there's no jokes about it. This day pre-market, I believe NVIDIA was already trading 2 million shares. So that's a lot of volume. That's how I was able to get in and out really quickly with my losing trade that I showed you earlier pre-market. And number three, you want to see an uptrend on the daily chart. So we also talked about this earlier. You can see leading up to this particular day, the earnings, NVIDIA was on a tear, right? We're talking about a move from 405 to 420, 440s, and all the way ripping up to 500s in the last 1 week. So it's definitely a very bullish and uptrending daily chart. And criteria number four for this particular long strategy, you want to see a retracement. So basically a retracement is like profit taking or sell off on this huge overnight gap after the open. So the reason this is not fitting for the long strategy is because it did so much of that sell off, right? $500 down to $480. So essentially the long strategy is to find an entry to go long for that bounce after this kind of huge retracement. So that's the thesis of this long setup. This gap up long strategy is a very beginner friendly strategy, mostly relying on technicals, but also really profitable if you are really timely with your executions. So you can comment gap up trading down below and I'll send you a detailed video tutorial for this particular strategy with even more live examples. Okay, so now let's return to our long setup on NVIDIA. You can see previously I was already long 484s. Again, I'm looking for that bounce towards the 490s if we get it. Oh, wow, that happened quick. So I already sold some. I sold 400 shares on a little bounce to 485. So only made about $1 per share on the long side. You can see I realized $400, but I was looking for a lot more for the bounce. So that little bounce turned out to be a scalp. But scalping, can definitely help in this situation where the stock is still remaining very heavy to a downside. And it's not really giving us that big bounce that I was looking for. Okay, I had to skip ahead and fast forward a little bit where I've been kind of going in and out of the long side on NVIDIA. So you can see I'm back in with an 1100 share starter at 484. So the exact same levels, but this time around, I used 5-minute chart at the bottom. 5-minute chart here is starting to form a hammer. As you can see, long wick at the bottom means the stock is getting bought back up. So that's the reason I did re-enter with an average of 484 over here. Again, we talked about that 485, 490s level. It's kind of want to see the stock to hold for it to continue the bounce. So let's see if we actually get it. You can see I'm down a couple $100 with my average here. I'm also not adding because I think the stock overall is very heavy and I didn't feel comfortable adding. We talked about this, that when I'm trading the other side after the short, when I'm trading a long, I'm very conservative with my sizing. So I almost treat it just as a scalp, okay? So scalp sizing only. All I'm looking for is a bounce of a couple dollars if we get it. You can see the stock is remaining extremely weak. I'm down about $1 per share, $1.70 per share. So not fun. But I'm really trying to let it work on the 2-minute chart and 5 minutes. You can see I'm trying to reduce my exposure at 400 shares. So I sold 400 shares at 484. Very small profit. Again, I want to reduce my risk exposure in case this thing falls off the cliff once again. And at the same time, a lot of other tech stocks are selling off. So I want to make sure NVIDIA doesn't get pulled down. So fast forward, it's almost 10 o'clock now, and the stock is still not bouncing. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna bail soon. Fast forward here, I'm still holding that same 600 shares. All I want is a small bounce. You can see it's hitting that 485's area. I'm up like a couple $100, 486. I really want to see if I can get like 490, but it's definitely having a lot of trouble. This is how you read price action, by the way. You switch between the 5-minute and the 2-minute charts and see how it reacts to those price levels. And with this, every single time it tries to bounce, it gets slammed back down. So that kind of worries me a little bit for my long position. So 486, 50s, I was up a little bit, like almost 2 points per share. I want to see if we can hold this bounce. You can see I'm waiting at 490s to get out. I'm up, $4 per share. Nice little profit on the long side. So you can see I'm trying to sell 200 shares at 488. So 200 shares. I only have 400 shares left. 489. Okay, very nice. Let's see if we get one more pop to that 490s for me to get out all of this long. Remember, this is a gap up reversal long. Essentially, you're selling towards that VWAP area. You may not get it. I don't think NVIDIA gets that VWAP. But 490s will be like a nice little bounce. This felt like so long ago, even though it was only like 2 days ago. All right, I actually added 400 shares. So now I have an average of 486. Even I'm impressed by how long I held the long side. I thought I would have bailed ship a long time ago. So fast forward, you can see this is a 2-minute chart once again. That 490s, you see a lot of wicks around that area. That area is holding up really, really well. As resistance, I mean. Okay, yeah, you can see stock is breaking down. I'm now red. I think I'm just gonna bail. Would have been nice if I sold into those little pops, but clearly that 490 is holding up. And I think the stock is gonna continue the downtrend and sell off. So that's why I just decided to GTFO, get out. Yep, and I just got out. You can see at 485, I got out of my remainder 800 shares. So locked in $1,300 on the long side for the gap up reversal, long, the bounce essentially. And on the short side, locked in $7,600. So not bad. I think I could have done better on both sides, but it's not bad for 40 minutes of work. I hope from this video so far, you're getting a better understanding of the reality in trading through this live action commentary. It's very easy for people to teach you a chart pattern and find a perfectly fitting example to show you the ideal entry and exit in hindsight. However, as you learned from the video we just talked about, it's very difficult to time the perfect entry and exit. However, with experience and reading price action, you can get there slowly. Remember, execution is key. Now that you learned 2 of my strategies in this video, make sure you practice them in paper trading or trading live in small size. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more in the future, please remember to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you're serious about trading, then I highly recommend you to watch this gap trading crash course over here. In this free crash course, I shared over 5 gap trading strategies on the long side and the short side that you can use to trade these overnight gappers like I just did on NVIDIA. So if you're ready, I'll see you in the next video.